I tried beating Terraria as the Aura class. This class of weapons produces a ring around the player, damaging any mob that gets inside automatically. Will I be able to capture the Moonlord in my Aura? Well, let's find out. I started my journey by chopping down trees and then checking the various crafting recipes of all the auras. I have played this mod in the past, but I have been told that it's updated all the way up till endgame. So for this reason, I had to do a full playthrough. The first aura we crafted was the wooden aura, which required only 8 wood. This was a pretty decent weapon and honestly far better than the copper short sword, but from what I realized, the auras work in a special way. Essentially, everything that is closer to you gets dealt far more damage than the mobs that are further away, and any mob that's behind a wall will also take far less damage, so we can't just sit behind a wall and try to cheese every single mob. I went to explore a cave, got myself a ton of various ores because I wanted to craft all the other auras, and then I ventured over to the corruption biome in order to break a demon orb so we can get the meteorite to drop in. I used my wooden aura to fend off all the Eater of Souls, and before I knew it, while trying to blow up another orb, I killed myself. Next, I went to go dig out a elevator for myself, and in turn, I also upgraded from the wooden to the silver aura. Along with this, I made myself a radar device, which was actually a phenomenal weapon to use, and it was probably better than the auras at this stage, so I decided to use that over the silver aura. But I continued digging the elevator, and once it turned to nighttime, I came back to the surface to build myself an arena for the Eye of Cthulhu, and then I proceeded to fight it. Using the radar device, we slowly but surely took out the Eye of Cthulhu, and any chance I got to use the silver aura, I would use it to deal some extra damage. Once I took out the Eye of Cthulhu, I crafted myself the Night Shroud, which did 21 aura damage. This was crafted using 10 demonite bars, and it is a wonderful upgrade from our silver aura. Right after this, I went into the corruption in order to fight the Eater of Worlds. Using the Night Shroud aura, we absolutely demolished this boss, and what I realized is that worm bosses are very easy with the aura class. Since we can deal damage to multiple segments at once, any boss such as the Destroyer and the Eater of Worlds becomes stupidly easy with these weapons. After this, I crafted myself a nightmare pickaxe, went down to the underworld, and started grinding out obsidian as well as hellstone. Once I returned back to the surface, I crafted myself the waves of fire, which costed us 18 hellstone, and a molten pickaxe. I built myself a bunch more NPC houses using the LuiAFK prison builder, and I also crafted myself an aura accessory called the magnifying glass. I very soon upgraded it with hellstone to craft myself the magmifying glass. You get it? Magma. And essentially, this allows you to shoot a giant laser whenever using the auras that only works in the underworld or above ground. I went right over to fight Skeletron and we took him out extremely easily. Like, the auras were very overpowered, especially once we had the magnifying glass. And then after this, I went to his dungeon to farm out water candles and to also pick up another aura that I know spawns in the dungeon. I got myself that aura, came back to spawn, crafted myself the unlimited battler buffs, and then I went to go farm out mushrooms as well as luminous powder in order to craft pre-hard mode aura armor. Once I got myself a full set, I went into the jungle to farm out life crystals, and once we had a sufficient amount of HP, I know it's not 400, but it will do for now, I went down to the underworld, built myself an arena for the Wall of Flesh, got myself a guide voodoo doll, chucked it into the lava, and it actually spawned on the wrong side. This of course caused me to die, but I wasn't gonna give up that easily. I farmed out more guide voodoo dolls, waited for the guide to respawn, and during this process a goblin army actually invaded us. Check out how easy the goblin army was with the aura class. One thing that I've noticed is that if you have a large crowd of enemies, the aura class weapons are something that you need to use. For crowd control, this is probably the best class you could really play as. Anyways, once the guide was back, I went down to the underworld, chucked the guide voodoo doll into the lava, and we took out the Wall of Flesh quite easily. As soon as this was done, I sprinted over to the corruption and started breaking myself demon altars in order to bless the world with the hard mode ores. I was getting absolutely demolished by the wraiths, and our weapons were frankly underpowered, and our armor was also quite underpowered. I very quickly set out to craft myself a full set of adamantite armor by progressing through the pickaxe ranks, so of course I got myself the palladium pickaxe first, then I made myself a mithril anvil along with a mithril pickaxe, and then I got myself all the adamantite ore I needed. I got myself full adamantite armor, an adamantite aura, and the only thing left to do now was fight the mechanical bosses. Before this, I also wanted to get myself a set of wings, so using my adamantite aura, I went up to the Sky Islands and started grinding out wyverns. I got myself a giant harpy feather together and crafted myself the Harpy wings. This is always my go-to, and I think it's probably the easiest set of wings to get when you start off in hard mode. I went to the dungeon to farm out bones so we can actually craft the mechanical skull, and after grinding out a bunch of souls of night and souls of light, I managed to get myself a ton of cursed flames, which we could use to craft ourselves a brand new aura. This hypothetically dealt less damage than the adamantite aura, but its range was absolutely absurd and far greater than the one that we had before. This gave enemies the cursed flame debuff, so it was actually pretty overpowered, and it was absolutely fantastic for taking out large groups of enemies. Once it turned to nighttime, I summoned in the destroyer. He was bunched up in one area, and I managed to absolutely obliterate this boss quite quickly because, as I said, the aura class is absolutely fantastic against worm bosses, so this was no challenge whatsoever. And now that we beat the destroyer, we could actually upgrade our radar device to a sonar device, which was the same thing, but it dealt far more damage and it had a much bigger range. After this, I summoned in the twins and used the eradicator to deal damage to both of them while also utilizing the power of the sonar device. We took out Spasmatism first, left Retinazer for later, and as soon as we defeated the twins, we could also upgrade our aura. Using Hallowed Bars and Souls of Sight, I crafted myself the Holy Radiance, which was a direct upgrade from the Adamantite aura. It dealt a little bit more damage, but it wasn't anything special. It did have one ability which stopped every mob in its path as long as it had under 1250 HP. I still found the Eradicator to be far better, so I continued using that. After this, I waited for another day to go by because I was not ready to fight Skeletron Prime on that day, and once it turned to nighttime, I buffed up, summoned him in, and used the sonar device along with the Eradicator to deal damage to all of his arms at the same time. And honestly, out of all the bosses, this was probably the hardest. For some reason, Skeletron was just a huge pain. All of his arms would protect his skull, and it was really difficult to deal damage to the boss himself. But once we took him out, the jungle grows restless. You know what else grows restless? The aura of me telling you to subscribe to the channel. So press it or else. After defeating Skeletron Prime, we could craft ourselves a brand new aura called Toxifying Mist. This essentially shot out a bunch of mini targeting auras that would deal damage to enemies all around us, and I still don't really understand how this works, but I did use it in the jungle when trying to clear out mobs in search of Planterra's bulb. I went over to the jungle to farm out Chlorophyte, and with enough Chlorophyte, I came back to spawn and upgraded our magnifying glass so it would become even better. This just gave it more range and made it do far more damage. After this, I went to go farm out turtles because there is no pre-Moonlord aura armor that we can get, so we're just gonna go with the turtle armor and then beetle armor later. I farmed out a bunch of turtles until we got full turtle armor, and once I found Planterra's bulb, I cleared an arena using dynamite, and then we summoned her in. I made sure to have all my buffs on me because I knew that this boss fight is gonna be a bit of a struggle. Bosses for the most part were fairly difficult with the aura class, and what made it harder is that if we wanted to deal solid damage to them, we actually had to be in very close proximity to them. So something like Planterra was extremely difficult to take care of, but using the Eradicator and the magnifying glass, we took out the salad boss, and once Planterra was defeated, I headed straight for Golem. No hesitation, no worries, I went into Golem's temple and summoned him in. I managed to actually take him out on our very first try, which frankly doesn't happen too often anymore. I've literally been getting so bad at the game that I can't even defeat Golem anymore. But yeah, once we took him out, I came back to spawn and we got invaded by pirates. So since we had the best crowd control weapons, we absolutely demolished this entire invasion like it was no work whatsoever. And then at spawn, I fought Golem a couple more times in order to get enough beetle husks to craft ourselves full beetle armor as well as beetle wings. After defeating Golem for the first time, we also managed to get a brand new aura called Temple's Guard, but it's only really effective once you have lower HP because once your health reaches 50%, it starts firing lasers at your enemies. After defeating Golem, I went to go fight lunatic cultists without even crafting beetle armor, and this is where it became kind of apparent that yeah, this class is not for bosses. I'm gonna be real with you guys, this class was so horrendous that I rage quit fighting lunatic cultists. At first I thought it was okay, but probably 6 minutes into the fight I realized, hey, we're not making any progress and we're not dealing any damage. How am I going to beat the lunatic cultist? Tried to use the sonar device, I tried to use the auras, and we couldn't do anything. This took me countless tries. I died so many times. I brought him back to spawn. I tried to cheese him with the nurse, but I just couldn't beat him. Of course, I had to re-strategize, meaning that we're gonna have to go back to Golem and actually get fully prepared. Yeah, this time I can't just skip straight to the solar pillar. I guess I actually have to play the game. Well, I beat Golem a bunch more times, crafted myself full beetle armor as well as beetle wings, and then once I was ready, I buffed up and then went back to fighting the lunatic cultist. We actually took him out this time and we started the Celestial Pillars event. Upon defeating him, we also got a bunch of materials which are called Dark Energy Fragments. With this, we could craft probably one of the best auras in the game, which is called the Hyperspace Aura. Essentially, this creates 3 hyperspace beams that home in on nearby enemies, and then they split to deal even more damage. With this, I actually felt kind of confident to take out the pillars, and so that's exactly what we did next. The pillars were actually not too hard, just because the aura weapons are really good at taking out large groups of enemies, but I mean things like the solar pillar were still no easy task. We took that out first and I died countless times, but I persevered and got through it. Then next, I took out the vortex pillar, I took out the nebula pillar, and left the stardust pillar for last. As soon as I took out the stardust pillar, I went to build myself a tiny stone wall in order to protect us from the lasers, and then I bought myself a bunch of buff potions. Our screen started shaking, meaning that yes, Moonlord was about to spawn in, and I'm probably gonna take the biggest L of all time. Like guys taken, I died to the lunatic cultist. How am I gonna take out Moonlord? He spawned in, and the Hyperspace Aura was actually dealing some decent damage. We could hit almost 2 of his eyeballs at once just because our aura was actually that big. So I mean, we were kind of multitasking. Well, anyways, we took out his right arm first, took out his middle eye, and then took out his left arm. The only thing left now was the core, and boyos, let me tell you, when I say I was cheesing him with the nurse, that is me being very generous in my words. I was running non-stop to the nurse. I don't know what I would have done if the nurse wasn't in the game. Like, I would have died so many times, it would have driven me absolutely insane, so thank God for her. Anyways, using the Hyperspace Aura, we finished off Moonlord's core and officially beat Terraria as the Aura class. We could have beat Moonlord a couple more times and crafted ourselves the final Aura armor, but frankly, I do not have the patience for that anymore. But regardless, I had lots of fun playing this, but I genuinely do think that this mod still needs a lot more work before it could really stand on its own against the bigger mods such as the Clicker class and so on. Consider checking out another video like this on screen, subscribe to the channel if you're new, drop a like if you enjoyed the video. This has been Boyo, peace out.